Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be doing the third and final review of Judy Fong Bates's Year of Finding Memory here on Hello Hemlock. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I spent the whole summer seemingly recommending it to everyone I knew. I would bring it up constantly in conversations. I just found the story super fascinating, and the fact that it was this woman's quote-unquote real life that she was depicting and sharing with the whole world, I just found it so intriguing. It sounds like of the three of us, I was the one that was most enamored by it. Jason did like it, and Karate did like it, but I think both of them found that there were a few kind of problematic issues that they were kind of dealing with, and I think that's what I love about this channel, Hello Hemlock, because there's three fairly similar people that are reading one text, and we're always coming away with something very different from one another, and we care about such different aspects of the text. So the first thing that I want to talk about is building reality out of memory. This is something that Jason kind of touched on in terms of the idea of weaving together memories, and also the idea of kind of discovering other truths. One of the most fascinating things to me was all these kind of half-truths and mistruths and fibs that she was told growing up, and elements of her parents' lives that she wasn't really told about, and the elements that she was told about didn't really resonate with her in any way. They had no real weight because she was a child and because she was ignorant of all of the hardships that both of her parents had to go through as she grew up and even prior to her birth. One of these little factoids about Judy Fong Bates was that she had been told her entire life that she was from a specific place. She had a specific birthplace. And when she got to China, her family members told her that she was actually born somewhere else. And it's just seemingly one of the many things about her life that is worthy of writing a book about. Like, I know where I was born, and I think to find out, you know, in your 60s, that the place that you've identified as your birthplace, whether you know it or not personally, it would have an effect on you, and it would make you want to discover what other fibs you had been told in your life. Similarly, the fibs that were kind of told about life in Canada to the rest of the family back in China, they had a very unrealistic understanding of what was happening to Judy Fong Bates's mother and father and how they were leading their lives. And I found it so cheeky that they would stand in front of a stranger's yard in their neighborhood and dress up in really nice clothes and take a photo and send it back. And at the time, it had no meaning or no significance to Judy at all. She was embarrassed and she didn't know why it was happening, but ultimately it didn't really dawn on her until later on in life why her parents were motivated to do that. And I think the kind of web of understanding or misunderstanding, as the case may be, for the rest of the Chinese contingent is so intriguing. The fact that their parents agreed to let people think and believe that they were living a very good life in Canada. And I'm so curious to know whether that's based on pride or if it's based on sacrifice, whether it's based on wanting people not to worry about them and wanting people to feel that there is some land of hope out there. Because I know that a lot of the people that were in China at that time would have wanted to leave if they could. And to be told that that promised land is no better than the atrocities that they were living through, presumably her father would want to kind of save them from that reality. Karate touched on Judy's role, and her role both in her childhood and in her adult life were very intriguing to me. The fact that she played this kind of interpreter as a child, as well as when she was a fully grown adult, whenever it came to her parents, that was a pretty interesting way to grow up and to continue to lead your life. Karate said that she had a lot of problems with how Judy represented herself in the book, and she found her very self-serving and very self-involved, especially when it came to matters like her father's suicide and how she viewed that as an event in her life as opposed to, something traumatic that somebody else had experienced, not just her. I think we've all seen Judy differently throughout the reading of this book, and I think that I've seen her definitely as selfish, but it seemed very self-aware as well. It really felt like I was reading about the character Judy by the author, who happened to be also called Judy. I just found the character to be, obviously it was meant to be her, but at the same time it still felt like a character. She had that omniscient kind of narration about her own life, and I don't think that you can do that when you're trying to talk about yourself. So I do feel that there was some distance between the author Judy and the character Judy. And keeping that in mind, I found the character Judy to be incredibly raw and honest, and I think that can only be done if the author is raw and honest. And I think that the author herself is probably very self-aware and very cognizant of the fact that she had spent a lot of her life underappreciating what opportunities she was given. You could look at a lot of this book and think that, oh my gosh, this is deplorable, that this woman couldn't comprehend how awful the life that her mother led could be until she herself was a mother. But at the same time, it's hard for me to believe that someone remembers a trip that they took when they were 3 years old, and that's just because I don't remember anything previous to probably the age of 7. So for me to think that somebody who is much older than I am now could remember an event a trip that they took or an event that took place when they were a toddler isn't very believable, but it does make for a good story. So the fact that she could remember being excited to go on this big adventure with her mother when she was 3 years old, the very same day that her mother had to leave her other daughter, who was only 13 at the time, in China, and go to a new foreign country, meet this man who she arguably barely knew, and start a life there. It reeks of hindsight. It's clearly not something that she truly remembers. It's a story that she's kind of weaved together. I think the fact that she does understand the agony that her mother would have had to go through on that day and on that trip that they took, and she doesn't understand that until she is practically a grandmother herself, and has gone through the trials and tribulations of motherhood. I think that is the analytical mind of a storyteller at work. I don't think that that's accidental, and I don't think that's somebody who doesn't have that kind of self-image. I think, to me, it sounds like Judy Fong Bates has been given a lot throughout her life and have had people who have sacrificed a lot throughout her life, and she has had very glaring moments of not recognizing it. And the rest of the time, she's very cognizant of how good she has it. And her trips to China have only solidified that belief. I actually found the relationship between Judy and her mother to be one of the most fascinating ones throughout the book. The relationship between a mother and a daughter is something that is so fragile, and it's so intense, and it's not something that's really ever talked about. Judy kind of transforms throughout the entirety of the book and kind of falls in love with her mother's story. The admiration for her mother grows and grows and grows, with each passing page. She begins the story by describing how bitter a woman her mother was, and how destitute she and her family were, and how Canada basically seemed to kind of suck the life out of this woman. So from the time that her daughter was a small child until her last moments on earth, this woman was completely isolated. And to me, she was kind of the swan song of the story. Ultimately, this book was a fascinating read, and I'm going to continue to recommend it to basically anybody that I can. She's a pretty great writer, and she's incredibly talented in terms of weaving a story together. And she's very honest, as Jason mentioned at the beginning of the book, to say that it is a work of creative nonfiction. One thing that I could not shake throughout the entirety of the book was the fact that her father's death and how he died was a secret. And not only that, but it was a shameful secret. And it struck me that she wasn't writing under a pseudonym, she wasn't using a pen name, and her entire family would presumably be very proud of any publication that she were to create. So it seems like this is very much a family sensitive topic, and it's something that she should discuss or should have discussed with her family. So something that I've been curious about from the time that I read it is whether or not her family in China has read this, or if she had to have that really difficult conversation that she wasn't able to have with them during those trips. Dear Finding Memory was a fascinating read. It's incredibly intriguing, and I don't think that anyone would be disappointed by the experience. Thanks so much for watching. Keep in mind, this month we are reading Fifth Business by Robertson Davies, so feel free to read along with us, and we're going to be discussing it in September. Thanks again so much for watching us here at Hello Hemlock. We'll talk to you soon.